Good afternoon, everybody. Looks like we've still got some people filtering in. How is everybody today? Can you hear us fine? Can you see us? Can you hear us? Okay, excellent. We've got confirmation. So, everybody, thank you very much for joining the C3 Foundation's weekly live stream. And again, today we have Claudia Christian with us. And today we're going to be talking about people who start slow or are rapid responders and then need to make some adjustments for the long term. But before we begin, this past weekend, we had a gentleman named Thorlar who is a prolific daily Twitcher, and he so generously used his stream on Saturday as a fundraiser for us. And Claudia popped in for a couple of hours. We had a whole bunch of fun. And we don't have the final numbers yet because everything came in through a couple different payment platforms. But Thorlar matched donations. And so we exceeded $2,500 that were raised during that stream in just a couple of hours, and it was just so amazing and such a generous community that that Thorlar has that pitched in and took part in this fundraiser for us.
Yeah, it was terrific, and big shout out to anybody who was involved with that. It was not only a lot of fun, but as Jenny said, a very generous community that gave us a financial boost that we appreciate and need. So thank you.
Absolutely. So with that, let's go ahead and get right on into what we've got to talk about today. So, Claudia, why don't we start with a rapid responder? What is a rapid responder?
I believe I was a rapid responder, which was basically it's people who sometimes when they take the first tablet, the very first time they ever try naltrexone or nalmefene, they literally cannot finish the drink. Other people, so that's like what we call an immediate response. Other people are fast responders when they cut their drinking in half within 4 weeks, 2 weeks. And they'll see this substantial decrease, this immediate response to the opiate blocker in their brain, and they'll get incredibly excited and say, wow, I'm done, pretty much. So fast responders, they usually are consistent drinkers that I've found. For instance, they're habitual drinkers, and they'll find that they cut their, like I said, they go from 5 glasses of wine to 2 glasses of wine overnight, virtually overnight. And that seems like a really good place to be, but they're still drinking every night. So that's sort of one subset of immediate responders or fast responders. Anyone who sees a marked difference, anybody who stops thinking about alcohol as much, they would be a rapid responder. These are the people that you see on social media that say, wow, I'm 3 months in and I'm done, or I've been on naltrexone for 7 days and I've had 5 alcohol-free days, and you're like, okay, well, that's probably a temporary situation. We don't want to, that's a mini honeymoon. We don't want to, listen, there are people like Gary Bell out there, bless him, who's in my film One Little Pill, that, took naltrexone for a very short period of time and has been abstinent for the last 7-8 years. So yes, there are cases of people who are immediate responders and who do TSM for a few months and boom, they're done and dusted. But for the majority of people, there are some little surprises behind the Pandora's box, which is immediate responder.
And you mentioned a term that we see floated around in our peer support groups a lot, the honeymoon period. So explain what the honeymoon period is from your point of view.
Well, there's a couple of honeymoon periods. The honeymoon period, if you're in a 12-step or abstinence-based program, is that period of sobriety where you don't have cravings and you don't have that compulsive desire to drink. That's the honeymoon period. You think that you're cured. Oh my gosh, I used this to get sober and I feel amazing and I'm working out, my life is on track, and then the cravings start to creep in, and you think to yourself, whoa, I can have a drink because I've just been sober for 3 months. That's that honeymoon period. The honeymoon period on TSM is that period where all you have to do is pop the pill and magically your drinking decreases and you're just like right on schedule. You're looking at your drink log thinking, wow, I went from 65 units to 22 in 10 days. I'm cured. You know, that's a honeymoon period. You don't change anything in your life. You've made no adjustments. You walked into this fairly motivated, but the pill did 100% of the work. That's a real honeymoon period in my opinion.
And how much does motivation play into that honeymoon period?
Motivation, it depends. I mean, listen, motivation is incredibly important in recovery. It's already, studies have been done that people who have a lack of self-efficacy, which is this belief that you can actually stick to a program or achieve something. So lack of self-efficacy would be somebody who says, you know what, I'm going to try this, but I don't think it's going to work, or I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can comply with this, or I can't stay sober, whatever. They found that people with that lack of self-efficacy, that lack of self-belief, if they have enough motivation, they can succeed. And quite often they do succeed. So motivation going into any program is incredibly important. And if it's a program that revolves around you having to take a tablet 1 hour prior to the first drink of the day, yeah, you're going to have to be motivated to comply, to basically stick to the theme of something. I do find that people who are incredibly motivated for reasons in their life, such as they want to get their job back, they want to work on their marriage, they want to gain the trust of their children back, they have strong motivation to do TSM and to be successful at TSM. These people do have, a really good chance of doing well because they're so motivated. I have clients who have little motivation and clients who have a lot of motivation, and it does make a profound difference in their journey.
And how important is it to remember that motivation is not a constant and that it can have ups and downs?
It's incredibly important to remember that. I mean, listen, you're motivated in the beginning to work out. I even built an outdoor gym because I wanted to have a dedicated room. And believe me, in the beginning, I was in there every single day because I thought, wow, I spent that money. Due to COVID, I can't see anybody or go to a gym or anything like that. So I'm going to work out here. It's right in my backyard. It's so convenient. And the motivation starts to ebb. You find yourself going, and then I start to feel guilty. And then, so how do I motivate myself? I try and shift my mindset of saying, you know what, I would feel so much better if I go out there and spend 30 minutes. You know what? The world is not going to end. I can take 20 minutes and go out there and do some Pilates or some stretches, something that is for me, something that is self-care. So that is a reminder. So my motivation started to dissipate and I started different ways of reminding myself. If that didn't work, I tried a timer. So I would put a timer on for the morning saying, you know what, if the timer goes off by 8:30 and I have not gone outside to the gym, that's my reminder to say, okay, time to get motivated, no more excuses. So I've had to challenge myself and shift things up a bit to get motivated. And I think that that's what people have to do in recovery as well. Because if you're motivated to stay compliant, for instance, that'll take you only so far. I mean, once you get the compliance aspect of TSM under your belt and you remember to take the pill and becoming sort of like second nature to say, oh yeah, I'm going to go see my friends, I'm going to pop the pill. And you no longer have to think about that. You would never dream of not complying. Okay, well, that's one thing you don't have to really stay motivated about for now. But what about all the rest of the motivation that goes along with recovery and constantly being reminded of, now I have to change my habits, I have to do this, so it's a very human feature to lose motivation when A, things are working out really well in the beginning, and B, if things are working out really badly in the beginning. Those are two reasons to lose motivation.
And I love that you used something as universal as working out as your example, because a lot of people have a misconception that motivation or lack thereof is something that is indicative of addiction, but it really is, as you said, it's a human condition. And it's, for people who are out there who are on the Sinclair method, if your motivation is waning, that's not an indictment on you. If you're a family member or a friend of somebody who is in recovery, if you see your loved one is losing a little bit of motivation, that's okay. You can help them find ways to get it back. It's not because they're addicted, it's because they're human.
Yeah, yeah. Best intentions, I mean, we're fallible. Um, it is, and it does come, it's a double-edged sword, because if things are super easy for people in the beginning of the process, they lose the motivation to do everything else that comes along with TSM, which is changing your habits, adding things to your life, and really trying to create a new life where alcohol is not the focus.
And what are some of the common pitfalls that people who are rapid responders and see that amazing initial reaction to TSM, once that wears off, what are some of the common obstacles that they find themselves later on having to deal with?
Well, one of the biggest ones is people will say to me, I'll see the drink log and they've dropped their consumption in half. And then it starts creeping up, and it starts creeping up because they didn't change their habits. They haven't added hobbies to their lives. Most important, they haven't changed their habits. So in other words, they're still drinking the same beverage in the same chair in the same house, the things we talk about all the time. They have not made any adjustment. They still pop the pill. I had one client that popped the pill every night at 5 o'clock and drank 2 bottles of wine in the beginning, and then got down to 3 glasses, but it never changed. And then it started creeping up. So you'd say, well, from 2 bottles to 3 glasses is huge. Yeah, but it started creeping up because she didn't change anything in her life. She was still drinking, at the exact same time, in the exact same house, the same beverage every single night. And if your goal, once again, now we're reminded of goals, if you have no goal other than just, well, I want to decrease my drinking, that's the time to maybe get a specific goal of, I would like to decrease my drinking and have 2 alcohol-free nights a week. And on those days, I'm going to engage in good endorphin producing activities so that I can start feeling really good without alcohol that night. Just have a good night's sleep and start re-engaging with life. If you just pop the pill, the medication is not going to do all the work. So another pitfall would be suddenly feeling like you're failing again. So if somebody has decreased their drinking and the drinking starts creeping up again, they might throw the towel in because they're so used to methods to treat their AUD failing them. And this is not a failure. This shows you the positive aspect of it is this: you're a responder. I always tell that to people. This is great. You're responding to naltrexone. You have a tool, but that's the tool. It's not the whole bloody toolbox. You've got to have other things in that toolbox of recovery.
And that's really really important. And for anybody who is new to our stream or missed last week Claudia and I had a great conversation about habits. And in fact, it was probably one of our most lively, well received talks that we've done so far. A lot of great feedback off of that. So if you want to know more about habits and dig deeper into that, definitely go back through our stream and watch last week's stream as well, because it is available on replay and a lot of really great information about habits in there. So now we're going to shift a little bit to slow starters. And along the way, everybody, if you want to ask questions, go ahead and pop those right into the chat, because we will weave them in wherever we can. And if we can't weave it into the narrative, we'll grab it at the end. So definitely toss us your questions as you have them. But now we're going to shift to slow starters. And so briefly, Claudia, what does a slow starter look like?
I've dealt with people who they're fastidious about compliance, and they have high motivation, and they'll take the naltrexone and they'll not see really any difference. They say to me, I don't see any difference in the first 2 months. They'll even do a few of the things that we discuss, like staggering the time you take the pill, waiting an hour and 15 or an hour and a half before drinking. They'll try all these little things and they'll say, I still, I just don't see any difference. Then I've got to dive deep and I ask them, do you still crave the same way? Are the cravings the same? The patterns, is the intensity of the craving the same? And they'll say, no, not really. And I'll say, what about thinking about alcohol? Are you thinking about alcohol as much as you used to? Well, no, I actually went a whole day without thinking about alcohol. Yeah, that stood out to me. Okay. What about triggers? Are you being triggered as easily? And I'll say, no, I had a really bad day at work, but I didn't immediately think I should have a drink. So these are things they don't notice. They don't notice that they're drinking slower. They don't notice that things don't bother them as much. What they're seeing is the drink log only. In fact, one client of mine said, oh yeah, I threw half my beer away. I was like, that's huge.
Right, right. Because how often did that happen before the Sinclair method?
Never happened before the Sinclair method. So you may say, oh yeah, that, you're around 4 or 5 beers for the first 2 months per night. But the reality is you threw alcohol away, which you've never done before in your life. You didn't drink because out of an emotional response because you had a bad day. In fact, you went for a run instead. I mean, all these little things that add up to profound changes in the TSM experience. It's just not, the numbers aren't adding up to what you want right now. But slow and steady is great. They always say the turtle finishes the race, as well as the rabbit. But it really is. I mean, people, as long as you're seeing some changes, then it's pretty safe to say that you are a responder and you didn't fall into that tiny group of individuals who don't respond genetically to opiate antagonists.
And I've seen that a lot where people are so hyper fixated on their numbers, their drink log, and they forget that that's just, again, one tool for the toolbox, and it's a great tool to be able to track. It adds mindfulness. It's something that you can show to your doctor. You can show to your family members. You can look at yourself and show progress over time. But it is not everything about how you should judge your progress. I've even seen people in the peer support groups who have said, I don't see anything happening. I'm not blacking out the way I used to, and I'm waking up feeling somewhat refreshed in the morning, but I'm still drinking as much each week. And it's like, but you're telling me about you're telling me about your successes that you're noticing, but you're not equating that with success.
Yes, some people will say to me, oh yeah, I took the tablet and then I got all consumed in researching something and I just forgot to drink that night until really late. And I was like, that's huge. Usually when you pop the pill, you're looking at your watch going, when is 60 minutes over so I can drink? This time you just forgot. It's okay that at least you delayed it by 4 hours. That's huge.
Yeah.
So you really do have to look at those little successes, which aren't little successes. Those are big differences in your behavior. And that means that in addition to that, to the medication doing small changes, you can now add things like changing your habits to that equation, and then you're going to get probably a better result. But I think there's also a lot of peer pressure on peer support groups that say, there's this ideal of, well, Claudia said she reached extinction in 3 to 4 months. Well, I did reach a point where I had ambivalence or a lack of interest in alcohol, and things didn't trigger me, but I still had a whole lot of stuff to work out over the next 9 years. So everybody's journey is different. You should not compare yourself to anybody who says, oh, I'm done. There are very, very few people who literally go on it for 6 or 8 months and then never drink again. Yes, A lot of people do go sober and they move on, but the majority of people, you struggle. It's you find your groove within TSM. Some people go away after 2 years on TSM, they go on vacation and they've never been tested on holiday. So maybe they come back and they feel horrible because they drank a lot, or in their opinion they drank a lot. And I'll have to say to them, did you fall into a binge again? Did you drink the following morning? No. That's a success. You just, you tied one on, and that's okay. You complied. It's fine.
Yeah, when you really think about it, comparison can be the ultimate self-sabotage.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
while we were preparing for this earlier today, it brought to mind a story from when I was younger. And so everybody out there, imagine we're all going to travel to Claudia's house for lunch. Well, literally, unless two of you happen to be sitting directly next to each other in the same room, in the same house, we could all get to Claudia's house in a different way. Imagine we're in a non-pandemic world where we have no travel restrictions. Some people may want to get in their car and drive the most direct route. Some might want to take a very leisurely course through several scenic places. When I was 19, I got in my car in Northeast Ohio and I was going to move to San Diego. I drove by myself from Northeast Ohio to San Diego and back in a week without seeing anything. Now, I got to San Diego, realized nobody was hiring. I didn't have enough money to make it, without a job, so I turned around, I went home. And I missed a lot of the little things along the way. I had somebody offer me tickets to the San Diego Zoo that I declined because I was afraid if I was out there too long, I'd get stuck on the way going home and be stranded somewhere in middle America with nothing and no way to get home. I could have made a slight detour to see the Grand Canyon. And I opted not to. And so we tend to look at things about point A and point B, and we forget about the individual steps of the journey along the way, and how some things are going to be more important to others. We're all going to have different challenges, different roadblocks, and the Sinclair method is very much the same because no one comes from an identical drinking background.
Yeah, and those little things that you mentioned along the way just reminded me, the people who take the scenic route, meaning the slow way, have profound shifts in their understanding of why they drank in the first place. A lot of times they have more time to sort of understand their responses, their triggers, their knee-jerk responses to alcohol, to emotional outbursts or triggers. So these people, because it's a slow and steady process, they're slowly declining, they're decreasing their drinking every week or every month. I think they have time to sort of, I don't know, reach a sort of a better understanding about the origins of the drinking problem. If you go very, very quickly, like I did, you're ignoring part of the process, which is really understanding each and every drinking incident and what led you to that place where you were misusing alcohol, and undoing those behaviors as well. So if the biological aspect of addiction gets fixed overnight, you are apt as a human being to simply move on with your life. But you haven't dealt with any of the emotional stuff. You haven't dealt with any trauma. You haven't fixed those relationships that were broken. You've just so relieved that you found this method to decrease your drinking that you're moving on with life. You put a cork in it and you move on. That's exactly what I did. And that doesn't give you the ability to really take in everything. So the biological fix is wonderful. It removes the cravings, the compulsion to drink, and that's fantastic. But you still have to work on habits, emotional responses, trauma. You have to repair relationships. You can't just gloss everything over. And I think a lot of times when people are finished and want to move on with their life, they're really not finished. And 2 or 3 years down the line, they might find themselves in a situation like I did, incapable of handling immense emotional trauma, and lo and behold, drinking again heavily, or drinking without the protection of the opiate blocker.
Yeah,
You know,
every stop along the way, like an actual physical journey, is an
mm-hmm.
opportunity to learn more about yourself
Yourself, yeah.
and to work on that self-care and just let's face it, everybody out there, all including us, can always improve on some aspect of our lives.
Absolutely. Well, that's I think using this as the tool specific to your needs is imperative. So if the medication is going to help you eliminate the constant thoughts of alcohol, fantastic. If that's, your biggest issue. If it's the physical cravings, great. If the medication is going to help you be aware of how much you drink by having to take the pill and waiting an hour, and it's going to help you be mindful about your drinking, great. We also have to take into consideration that not everybody is drinking around the clock. Not everybody who comes to us is a binge drinker. Some people simply want to reduce their drinking, but they're so-called safe drinkers already, but they don't feel it's safe according to, the
Right. Guidelines.
guidelines, which change every year. If it's so if you drink a glass of red wine every night before, and then now you're just like, what, I feel like this is turning into a habit. I'd like to have a couple nights off, but I can't break the habit. That's completely different goal than somebody who is just dying to not drink for 24-hour periods at a time.
Right. And we've seen that entire gamut. I mean, multiple people who are turning to the Sinclair method with, they're drinking 120 plus standard units every week. And we've got people who are just realizing that they're not comfortable with how much they're drinking and want to do something before it spirals out of control. So, what are advantages, like some good advantages for people to remember about being slow and steady?
Well, I think being slow and steady is a wonderful time to make real long-lasting changes in your life. If you, first of all, you're going to build up a really strong ability to comply, because it's going to become a good habit to remember to comply. You're not going to take it for granted. It's going to be a steady result. I think this is also the time to really make some changes in your life and start adopting, as we say, the hobbies and removing the friendships that don't work, and working on reparation of relationships in your life, and also finding other activities that you can do besides drinking, because you're not changing so quickly. Like people who are rapid responders, they suddenly have all this time on their hands, but they haven't made any life changes. They haven't incorporated any new activities into their life. So those people are at risk of falling back into drinking, because they haven't accounted for all this time they're going to have on their hands. The slow responders can do that. They can slowly introduce new things. I try to recommend to people that they think about this prior to starting TSM, but most people reach us and they want to start right now. And that's so. For a slow responder, you also have time to work on yourself, the emotional reasons why you started drinking heavily in the first place, and that would be a good time to seek out a good peer support, or therapist, or psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever you're comfortable with.
I think
So
you
that
got an airplane flying over you or something.
I do. So you can
Okay.
start working on the emotional reasons behind drinking. So at the same time, concurrently, while you're working on the biological aspect and the habits, you can also work on the psychological reasons why you started misusing alcohol. So I think that is a slow and steady is a good solid journey and it's just as impactful as fast responders, and you just have to treat them differently. Honestly, I think fast responders can't get cocky. They can't. They that's the biggest risk for fast responders, is just to say, okay, I'm done. You're not done. That's what I went through as a fast responder. I just thought, well, this is great. It's behind me. I didn't do any of that other internal work, and that backfired on me. So, there's risks for both. I think for slow responders, they definitely risk becoming unmotivated, losing the sight of the goal because they're
Yeah,
frustrated.
frustration is can be big.
And once again, the comparison to other people's journeys doesn't help. But I think for slow responders, what they have to do to start staying motivated is really, really understand and write down in a journal everything. Like, okay, how was your cravings? Is it easier to wait the 60 minutes? Do you find yourself dealing with life stresses in a better, more healthy way? All of these are indications that TSM is working, even if the numbers aren't to your liking. Do you have fewer blackout days, as you said? Do you forget to drink sometimes? Have you ever poured out some alcohol? Maybe, people speaking down to you doesn't trigger you to drink anymore. Work is getting easier. Sleep is getting better. I'm waking up feeling better. You're working out all of a sudden. That's another thing. I had one person say, I don't see any difference. Oh, but I've been working out 3 days a week. I haven't done that in years. And I'm like, okay, that's huge. Well, because it didn't have, in their mind, it didn't have anything to do with drinking.
Right. And I think that's something that a lot of people overlook is that yes, the Sinclair method directly works on helping you to reduce your drinking, but the dual aspect of it really is about making a positive impact on your overall quality of life.
Right. Which is that's why you have to take note of those things. It's really important to check in with yourself, hopefully on a daily basis, and especially if you're a slow responder, and check in with yourself and say, do I see any changes? What about my mood? What about my health? What about my eating habits? If you're suddenly eating less junk food, well, that's an indication that the alcohol is not triggering you to do that. And even a half of a drink less or one drink less per week, that is a change. It's a decrease. And it's really remarkable to me that some people don't see profound changes because they are so hyped up and ready to have alcohol use disorder in the rear view mirror that they don't see. I've had some people who go down at least 10 units per week, and they say, but that's not enough. That's not my goal. And I'm like, well, you didn't learn this overnight, kiddo, so you're not going to unlearn it overnight. But
Right.
also, reducing your drinking by 10 units is a lot. Look at the money you're saving. Look at the calories you're not putting into your body. And little things like, oh, I had a better night's sleep, and you know what, I'm not as stressed out, and I don't feel that anxiety in my chest today. Those are changes, good changes, and those have to be understood and acknowledged, because it's not always going to be a linear thing, tracking of saying, okay, I went from 60 units to 40 units to 20 units to 10. That's not everybody's journey.
True. And when I was setting up the new computer at the office yesterday, I came across an old image of the states of change of liquid. And it shows that, at a certain temperature, water goes from ice up to liquid, and then it stays liquid for quite a long time on a flat, even surface, even though the temperature is going up, until suddenly it goes up for boiling. And then it levels back out and it plateaus and it plateaus, and then suddenly at a certain temperature it goes back up to steam. And all of the elements have these different plateaus in them, some shorter than others, and yet human nature actually follows that same chemical change of state format. We make a big leap, we stay where we're at for a while, sometimes longer than we're comfortable, and then we see more progress. And it's a normal way
weight loss, it's language learning, it's you have breakthroughs in knowledge. People can remember when they're sitting in algebra class and suddenly they get it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I get it now. You make profound changes. There are people who have been consistently on TSM for a year at 50 milligrams who have really painfully slow changes. I mean, I would have gotten very frustrated because they're literally decreasing so slowly that it's killing them. Once they establish the routine, they know they have to comply. They have complied. They're frustrated beyond belief. Sometimes these people will try under their doctor's, permission, with their doctor's permission, they will try a higher dose and they'll see a remarkable change. Just a remarkable change. They'll try 75 or 100 milligrams for a couple weeks and it's like, oh, that got me over the hump. And those people who've had that year to change habits, to try everything, to stagger their drinking times, to add hobbies to their life, to do all that, now when that big profound change comes in numbers, they're really ready to have a great recovery because they've put everything else into place. So once again, it wasn't a waste of time. Hopefully they adapted and changed things in their life that they should have changed. They've been working on themselves, going to a therapist. So now when the extra, higher dose elicited that wonderful response, they're just thrilled and they're in a really good position to maintain long-term recovery on TSM.
So in the chat, we've got Pascal Leroux who says, "Yeah, I had suffered a trauma and things were going well until there was a stressor and the trauma came back with a vengeance." So there's a lot of truth to that. And therapy and mindfulness shouldn't be tools people only consider when they see problems manifesting. Do you think this rings true?
You mean using mindfulness even when things are going great?
That's what they should do, as opposed to waiting until until everything's hitting the fan.
Yes, I mean even the gratitude of daily life, of just being grateful for the little things in life is an act of mindfulness. And when something bad happens, it will be so reinforced within your psyche that you are grateful for the ability to walk, to have hot water, to have a beautiful day once in a while, to be able to appreciate nature. You're grateful for a good book, for friendship. If you're grateful on a constant basis, that gives you this wonderful sort of pedestal to stand on, so that when things fly your way that are negative, you have all of this wonderful stuff underneath you that this is your support system, where you can revert back to there and say, yes, I had a bad day, but I have a home, I have a beautiful relationship, or I have a parent who's still living that I can, all of these things that you're grateful for. If you don't acknowledge those things, then when something bad happens, it's going to seem 100 million times worse than it actually is. So mindfulness is something you should absolutely employ every single day, not just in recovery. Everybody should be mindful. I joke about memory games all the time. I tell my mom, tell yourself, I'm putting my glasses out loud. I'm putting my glasses right here on the coffee table. That's an act of mindfulness. And believe me, your brain starts to memorize it because it's listening to you now. And so when it comes time to retrieve, where are my glasses? You'll remember. They're on the coffee table because I said it out loud. That's an act of mindfulness. So it can be used for superficial things, but it can also be used for life-changing things, in the ability to absorb negativity and absorb emotional trauma. And if something remarkable happens to you, and if you've been doing all this work, you can handle it. And I've said this comparison many times before. When I relapsed when Dr. Sinclair died compared to when my father died last April, big difference. I handled my stepmother and my father's death, and now my two aunts subsequently, and a very dear friend's death. All these people within 9 months have died, and I didn't feel the desire to drink once. In fact, it never entered my mind, because I had done years and years of work on understanding how I can deal with trauma without reverting to the knee-jerk response of a substance, and how I can be mindful and meditate instead, and take the feelings in and really grieve, something that I never allowed myself to do. And I think a lot of people do push their emotions down because we're not supposed to cry. We're not supposed to take time to ourselves. It's selfish to want to to mourn somebody and to sit around feeling blue. It's not selfish. This is what the body needs to heal. You need to grieve. You need to express that something hurts you. You need to say to somebody, you know what you just said really hurts my feelings. And this is why. This is who I am. I'm sensitive, or whatever, however it's comfortable for you to say. If you don't reclaim that part of you, it's going to continue to fester, and you might just fall into old bad habits of using a substance to assuage that. And we don't want that. We want you to feel. That's the thing that people deflect that all the time. Like, oh, we're just soldiers, cartoon soldiers, marching through life going, oh, I can't do that. That's how you get sick. That's how you go back to it, into addiction. And that is how, once you let things fester like that and you don't express yourself or take the time to heal and to feel, that's when bad things happen.
Yeah, and that sounds like a very, and when I say complex, I don't mean difficult. I mean wide-reaching and wide-ranging system of self-care.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that we are, especially, I don't, this is I'm not being sexist in saying this, but society dictates that men especially should not, should soldier on through certain things. And I have a lot of male clients who were expected to take things on the chin. Death, trauma, molestation, intense experiences, being in the military. They're supposed to come back and just, oh, everything's fine. I work with veterans. They were expected to just shove it down, and this is a place where a human being eventually is going to break. If you don't acknowledge that something is harmful to you or hurtful, and if you don't take the time to understand that and to grieve that and have that process, it's gonna manifest in other ways that isn't good. You're gonna lash out. You're going to use substances. Be the person that you don't want to be. And it's mindfulness. It is the very simplest form of stopping and saying, okay, something doesn't feel well in me. I need to think on this. Why doesn't it feel well? Always ask yourself why. It's the most important question. I feel weird today. I feel blue. Why? Why? Just take 5 minutes to yourself and think about why. Well, because that person said that. Okay, how can I handle that? How can I repair that relationship with that person in a very mature manner?
Right, because to be clear, you're not saying sit there and obsessively think about it either. Reflection as opposed to hyper focusing.
Yes. It's the mere act of recognizing something, even if it's you're never going to, let's say somebody cut you off in traffic and it really upset you and your heart's pounding and you're angry and you wish you would have flipped them off or been strong enough to say something or whatever. Somebody steals your parking place, these things that you think, oh, they're stupid. Why did it upset me so much? Okay, work yourself through the different responses. What if I would have done this? What if I would have done that? Or just acknowledge that it pissed you off. Okay, and let it go. Just let it go. It sounds easier. If you have to take a walk or something, or distract yourself or laugh about it, I always try and smile. That's sort of the big thing for me, is if something's really ticking me off and I find my face doing this and I find my whole body crunching up, I make myself stop and just, ha! It feels so stupid at the time, but the act of smiling makes me kind of realize, okay, I got to take a chill pill from obsessing over this, because the community is too active.
So when you think about the difference between, people who start slow and the rapid responders, overall, are the success rates long term the same?
They are. Yeah. So you're either going to get, yes, the compilation of studies that say 78% long-term success rate include people who had immediate responses and people who took a little bit longer. They also include people who were taking higher doses, or people who were working with therapists, people who weren't working with therapists. So, I think that's anecdotal evidence. The clinical studies, of course, had people just doing TSM. So, in my experience, anecdotally again, I found that people, the biggest issue of of not succeeding has been people who have either taken it for granted and become lazy about it, or non-compliant out of just, oh, I'm done. And those are people who didn't set up a good structure in the beginning for their TSM experience, or people who wanted something so quickly and just weren't invested in staying on this. They weren't ready to recover, in other words, or somebody else forced them to try TSM. Overwhelmingly, the people who are motivated, no matter how, if they go slow or if they go quickly, they have the same result, which is success. That's what I found, is that if you're motivated and they comply and they stick to it, and this is a lifestyle change, they're successful at TSM.
And how does managing, you're touching on it, but how does managing expectations really help with that?
You have to constantly remind yourself that you didn't this didn't happen overnight, and that's a hard thing for people to realize, because once again, going back to that whole thing about the human brain not wanting to be reminded of trauma, we blur out how long we were abusing alcohol a lot of times. So people will say, well, I don't understand why 1 year into TSM I'm not fixed. And I have to remind them, well, how many years did you have of really bad drinking, of drinking to excess, or drinking that was harming your relationships? Well, I wasn't really an alcoholic 5 years ago. Okay, but was your drinking an issue? Was it something that other people brought up? Yes. Okay, so how long was that going on? Well, since I was 30. Okay, well, you're 60 now. So we're talking about 30 years of inklings of alcohol misuse is not going to be completely cured in 1 year. You know, you have to retrain your brain, rewire your brain, and you've got to make profound changes in your life. You know, every single thing that revolved around alcohol in the past is not going to be revolving around alcohol anymore. If you continue to do the same thing, you're not going to have long-lasting changes. So I would say remind yourself of how long it took to get where you were in your drinking. Stop comparing yourself to other people. Understand that just like weight loss, a long and slow loss of weight, like, you know, people who lose 5 pounds a month and keep it off, that's the whole goal, is keeping it off. I can lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks if I starve myself and work out like a maniac and lose a lot of water weight, but I'm really hurting my body, I'm hurting my psyche, I'm punishing myself, and I'm probably going to gain it back and maybe even a couple extra pounds. So, and I haven't learned anything. What have I learned? I've learned that I can, you know, do something for the sake of doing it. That's not the process of recovery. So I would say to remind yourself, if it's taking a long and slow time, is what is the goal? The end goal. The end goal is to be either a safe drinker or to be abstinent. That's the goal. So when you reach that goal, if it's a year from now or 2 years from now, isn't it better than never? You know, I mean, you've suffered for 2 decades or a decade or even 5 years. And at the end of this journey, you're going to either be a safe drinker for the rest of your life or abstinent for the rest of your life. That's quite a gift.
Yeah, and we do see a lot of motivation in people who are using the Sinclair method overall, because of the fact that it's still so relatively unknown. And I say relatively based on everything else that's out there that has been out there for almost 100 years, and others that have decades. But for the most part, you know, I'll have people say, well, you know, how are you going to convince an alcoholic to go take a pill before they drink? And I always look at them and say, you don't understand what people are going through to find a doctor and to get a doctor to actually work with them on this. And it has gotten so much easier for so many people, but there are still a lot of people who live in areas where it's not easy to find a doctor. And once people have gone through all of the hoop jumping and all of the pleading and begging to get on the Sinclair method and to get their prescription, those are people who aren't just likely to say, okay, well, I just did all that work, so I guess I'm not going to do it now.
Yeah. Well, that gets back to just the bare bones of you can't force somebody to do TSM. Period. You have to have an inkling of motivation to change and to want to get better, and that is you don't have to believe that TSM is going to be the end all of your recovery experience, but you have to be motivated to give it your best shot, and that
Right.
means applying and participating in your recovery even if you don't believe it. Let's say, I have clients that have went to AA for years and years, and they just can't believe that this pill is going to fix them because it sounds way too easy, way too counterintuitive. Plus, they're supposed to drink on it. I mean, their mind is blown. So they don't believe it. Going in, they have absolutely no belief. They just are desperate and just want to try anything, throw anything at it. Those are the people that they're very motivated. They're extremely motivated because they're desperate. I don't care if they don't necessarily believe in it because they're going to comply and they're motivated. And eventually they'll come around and see, oh, wow, it does work.
Or
But I
as
convinced
Walter
people,
says in the chat here,
yeah,
they think it's not realistic for someone to take a pill, yet they think it's completely realistic to expect them to never drink again.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. But that's the type of person that the people who end up coming to us are people who are motivated to want to at least try it. It really is thinking about that question of success rates. I get back to really thinking of the overwhelmingly large number of people that I've been in contact with, and it people who have an immediate response, a very quick response, that do not work on the fundamental challenges of life are the ones that sometimes fail because the biological fix occurs, but they haven't worked on anything else. So,
But would you say it's an equal number of people who get frustrated because of a slow start, who then drop out early before they've really given the method a chance to work?
it is about equal, because I do have a lot of people who 2 years in, they just won't recognize that they have changed, that their drinking has changed. And I think that to be honest, there's a few that pop out in my mind right now that really didn't want to change their drinking habits. They knew they should, and maybe they had the pressure of a spouse to think that drinking a bottle of wine is not normal or healthy. But in all honesty, they just didn't really want to change that. So it crept back up again, and they kind of lost motivation because the motivation wasn't there in the first place, really.
So we've got a comment about tabling the concept of self forgiveness instead of being self critical. I think that's the question that's being answered or asked here. So you want to talk about the importance of the self forgiveness piece instead of being self critical?
Oh, that's huge. It took me years and years to be able to really believe it when I would tell other people, you didn't ask for this. It's not your fault. Forgive yourself. There's no point in reliving the embarrassing moments. There's no point in going through the I should have, I could have, I would have. It happened. It's in the past. You have your entire life in front of you. And I have to tell this to people who are 20 and people who are 75. Regret belongs nowhere in recovery, and the self-forgiveness, the real knowledge that this is not something you asked for, that you did not ask to become addicted to alcohol or compulsive about alcohol. This was not your choice. It's a very difficult thing to say because people will respond with, well, you didn't have to drink. Those are people who just don't understand compulsive brain disorders where, yeah, you have to. It's overwhelming.
And not to mention the fact that no one knows whether or not they're going to be addicted to a substance like alcohol before they have it for the first time.
Yeah,
it's not like we can see the future.
No, and you're raised in a European household like me, where a little bit of wine is given to the children. Nobody knew back then that was really dangerous for people with the genetic predisposition for AUD. So I think that that genuinely understanding that, and that the logical nature of and the rational nature, the lack thereof in addiction. It's not rational, it's not logical. So you cannot reason with guilt, because that would imply that this is a reasonable thing. So I should feel guilty because I made a fool of myself at my cousin's wedding because I was drunk. Well, I, being an alcoholic, really wasn't. I didn't deliberately go to the wedding to get hammered to make an ass of myself. So you can't keep harping on those things. You can't. You have to forgive yourself and say that was then, and now I'm doing something about it. That's the most important thing. I remind people all the time. You're doing something about it. You are in a program that you are motivated to do. You're complying. You're taking a medication. That's a desperate move right there. I'm taking a medication to fix my brain. That is somebody who's motivated, who understands they need to change. So where does guilt play any sort of positive role in that? What do you focus on? The good things. You are in recovery. You're recovering from this. And part of recovery is also forgiving yourself and saying, I have to move on. Otherwise, I'm just going to get lost in this miasma of guilt and shame, self-shaming, which is horrible.
And we've got quite the crowd out there right now. So for those of you who are on who are sitting here on Twitch in the chat area, uh, would you guys want to hear a week that is dedicated to just breaking down how to deal with self shame and stigma, and have us do that as a topic? Just go ahead and type a Y or write yes if that's something that you would want to listen to and would find beneficial. Because let's face it, there is such a shame and stigma issue surrounding addiction that we could probably spend multiple weeks talking about it. I'm getting a lot of yeses already, so we'll have to add that to our agenda as we keep putting together future talks.
Once again, we go back to mindfulness. And when you see this negative self-talk popping up, all of you just try this one little exercise. The voice starts saying, you're a loser, you're never going to work, you're never going to meet somebody, you're never going to, oh God, you look horrible today, blah, blah. Stop it right there. When you hear that voice popping up in your head, stop everything you're doing, take a deep breath, and focus on a beautiful place, a safe word for you, just the word love, or I love myself. Anything you can do to just bring it down. Because what that head is when it's like this thing bottling right up in your body. I call it the committee, and the committee starts going. It's the same voice that hits you at 3 o'clock in the morning saying, "Oh my God, I'm going to lose my house. I can't pay my bills. Oh my God." Take a deep breath. Try the breathing exercises. Hold it in for 4 beats. Let it out for 4 beats, and just maybe place your hands on your chest and just say, "It's okay. Everything's going to be okay." That act of mindfulness, of bringing it down and bringing yourself into a calm place, can really, really help alleviate that anxiety and that negative self-chatter. And everybody does it. I mean,
and I'm seeing things where they're saying about 80% of the average person's self-chatter, their committee, is saying negative things in our head.
It's really awful, and it doesn't help that we are so inundated with other people's supposedly perfect lives. It's all constant on social media, Instagram perfect, all this, everybody's loved except me. Everyone has a beautiful home except me. Everybody's is fit and in shape but me. You gotta stop comparing yourself to everybody else. This is your journey, it's your life. You are beautiful inside and out. You have something to offer the world, and you're special, you're unique. And that's what everybody needs to hear. And a lot of us didn't hear it from our parents. A lot of us had, very goals, where we're high performing. And a lot of people that struggled with substance use disorders are people who are really motivated to achieve a lot in life. And so by achieving stuff and making money and by getting the best car and things like that, we're deflecting. Well, look, I'm not a loser. I have this. But inside, there's a lot of self-hatred going on because we have this substance use disorder, or because we have a mental illness, or OCD, or a eating disorder. So we're beating ourselves up during the day, but yet on the outside to the world we look fabulous, and that's a really hard thing. That is like the struggle between good and bad constantly going on in the brain.
Yeah, just because you're not good at one thing doesn't mean you're not good at anything.
Exactly.
Just figure out, once you actually acknowledge what it is, what areas of your life you need to work on, whether that's addiction, whether it's the negative self-talk, whether it's a few things that creep in all at once. There's usually one thing behind it. Acknowledge it, and then just adjust to that. This week is all about making those adjustments once you've noticed something. And it's funny because the last few weeks we have talked about habits. We have talked about mindfulness. We'll go ahead and add, I believe we've got self-care coming up next month, and we will look to add in dealing with stigma and shame. But it really does all come back to just being aware and being present, so that you can then address it, because you can't fix something that you're unaware of.
Well, you just said it a couple sentences ago. You said notice. If you're not noticing things, you can't make any changes, and you can't recognize that same behavior. If we keep doing self-destructive things, if we have self-destructive patterns, we don't notice it, take a moment to reckon with that, we're never going to change it. And that's all going back to the act of mindfulness, being present, not living in your head all the time, coming back to you, being present and mindful. It's a huge act in recovery. We talk about it all the time. The act of saying, do I really want or need a second drink, instead of just pouring and drinking mindlessly.
Right.
That applies to everything in life. If you have a negative self-chatter in your head, well, notice it, be mindful about it, and now shift gears and talk back to it. When I hear that voice, especially as an actress, well, you didn't get the part because you think you're better than you are, and you're not. You're really actually bad, or blah, blah, blah. Well, the reason why you didn't get it is this and this and this. You don't look good. You didn't look good that day. I just stop and I say, shut up. I say it out loud, because it really is it's almost like that same lizard that used to tell me to drink. It's if there's still that little entity in the brain telling me stuff that I don't necessarily believe. So why is it there?
Right.
But until you recognize it and tell it to go away or shut up, it's just going to keep chattering, and it's really annoying.
Well, I think this is a good time to jump back to something that was said earlier in the chat by Natalie. And Natalie says, some people don't have as much of an ability to change patterns and habits, or even finding competent therapy to help with the other sides of alcoholism. So how does that fit into what we were just talking about?
Some people don't have the ability to
change patterns or habits. Or finding competent therapy to help with the additional parts of
Well, do you have a blank pad of paper and a pen and the ability to write? So you're going to journal every day, and you're going to journal your feelings so that you can then read them back to yourself, so then you can identify the negative self-talk and also the places where you can help yourself. And that is literally, if you're looking at it, if you go to bed at night, and before you go to bed, you write down everything that bothered you that day, everything that upset you, everything that you felt bad about, everything that you could have done better. You just journal everything. Do it again in the morning. And then you take a look at that, and you see patterns. You see patterns in how you really feel about yourself and your life. And that's when you can then say, okay, this is where I need to change. I need to give myself a break right there, because I'm actually a really good person. And that is not an indication of who I am. Maybe you wrote, I was mean to myself, or I sucked at this, or whatever. You'll see that in black and white. So journaling is, you don't need a therapist for journaling. It's a really good activity to do to be able to identify these patterns that we set ourselves up to for disappointment in ourselves. And then, so that's one thing. Another thing would be to ask a really, really good and trusted, not competitive or judgmental friend or relative or loved one, to ask them, I really need some helpful criticism, or helpful advice. What do you think I should work on? Am I insensitive? Am I too quick to judge? Am I, and just have a really kind of fun, make it light conversation, and just say, I don't want this to be heavy, but I really need some clarity, and I'm trying to improve myself or work on myself. If you trust the person.
Right. Obviously, that's huge. And you have to be mentally and emotionally in a place to actually accept that feedback as well, because it's a really scary thing to do.
Yeah.
Because whenever we find out things about ourselves that we've missed, it it can be jarring for us. And so it's a wonderful activity, but make sure you really do trust the person who is not saying this out of anything but love and support for you.
Yeah, it has to be a safe environment, but it's interesting to work on. I've been told that I was impatient a lot throughout my life, and I'm not going to say that I magically became patient overnight, but I catch myself all the time now because I'm mindful about it. I'll catch myself thinking the thoughts of, how come that person hasn't responded? How come this? Well, Claudia, not everybody lives on email, or I'll joke with myself, how come I haven't? How come that hasn't happened? Well, because not everybody is Teutonic in nature and gets things to, they have lives too. So I do take a step back and laugh at it because, but I do, and I definitely recognize it when I'm impatient. And that took a lot of years of really mindfulness of saying, wow, okay, I am impatient, and admitting it. I'm immediate gratification isn't fast enough for me.
Which makes what we do incredibly difficult because we are trying to change something epically entrenched. and it does feel like no matter what we do, no matter how much we do, it is not, I feel like we still haven't even scratched the surface.
Trust me, I'm the one that said it would take a decade, and that's 3 years from now. Clock's ticking, baby.
Yeah.
From anybody?
Well, we have another thing here from Stargate SG1 Ket. Said, I wish I'd known about the Sinclair method for a dear friend of mine. Unfortunately, by the time that I heard about it from Claudia, it was already too late because my friend's alcohol abuse had led to dementia, and there's no coming back. So one motivation to keep in mind is that a healthy body can lead to a happier life overall.
Yeah, and believe me, I lost a very, very dear friend to alcohol poisoning, and I tried to help him with TSM a number of times. We were very, very close. He was like a brother to me, and breaks my heart because I had the tools to help, but I didn't have the ability to force him to stay on it. Yeah. And that's something that, you have to look at that person, the person that you lost that could have, would have, should have. I'm not being flippant when I say this, but that's their journey. You cannot force someone to change. You can present all of the information. You can love them. That's the most important thing, is say, look, I'm not judging you, but I'm here to help you if you want help. And I don't know what to do for you, but anything you need. If you want me to bring you food, if you want me to just sit with you and hold your hand, I'm here 100%. That's what somebody struggling with addiction needs. They don't need judgment. You can gently send them information like, oh, I saw this woman's TEDx talk, or here's a great documentary, One Little Pill. I'm thinking of you, better yet, can I come over and watch a documentary with you and bring some food over and sit with them and hold their hand and watch it? let them cry, whatever. If they're not ready and they say, hey, screw you and get out of here, they're not ready, but you tried. And I feel for you, because you feel that loss and you feel like, oh, I should have done more, but you can't beat yourself up over that. You really can't.
Yeah,
And
having the information available in a judgment-free zone is, some call that enabling, but I call that complete BS. It Because if you run it up into some, you have somebody who you can help, it is so much better to let them know that you're there, let them know that you have information that you can share. But if you start trying to make demands, then you're going to shut the conversation with your friend down, and your friend is not going to feel comfortable coming to you when they are ready.
yeah, so yeah, that's a tough one. But yes, healthy mind, healthy body, healthy body, healthy mind. And alcohol is ethanol. It's poison. So anybody out there putting too much of it in their body will understand why suddenly they're anxious, depressed. You know, a lot of people say, "Well, I have so much anxiety, that's why I drink." And I say, "No, you're drinking. Your drinking is what's causing the anxiety." And many times when they reduce their drinking, suddenly the anxiety goes away as well,
Yeah, we've
because
heard
that's
that a
just
lot.
a chemical response to alcohol withdrawal. It's just a response to alcohol withdrawal, that feeling of heart palpitations. So it's a vicious circle. And anybody out there who's suffering, now you have some good information, so you can
And
share it.
Natalie writes, "Thank you for the answer. That's a good place for me to start as a full-time caregiver for a dependent in a small town without much DBT, CBD, mindfulness, or community outlets. I can write, journal. Thank you for
Good,
answering."
good, Natalie. I'm really happy to hear that. And that is something. You should also write down your dreams in the same book. So if you can remember your dreams the next day, write them down, because that is sometimes the subconscious really heals yourself at night, and you're working through things at night. And sometimes you forget them very quickly. So if I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll grab the book and sort of write in the dark blindly, and it's just a mess. But if I can make out the words, it's really interesting what you write about. So dream tracking is another thing, journaling and dream tracking, and you'll find recurring themes coming up, which will make you mindful about self-negative talk, and also behaviors that you're doing that might put you in this pattern, this holding pattern. Maybe you can break through that and find more happiness and peace.
And then we've got another comment here from Pascal Leroux saying, "Something I just thought about. What about framing it as a series of small battles in order to win the war? Treating it like a campaign for the gamers. Um, like if you're sitting down to have a drink, you take your pill and just sit there for a minute in a mindful state and then feel the compulsion. Basically, trying to get your rational system to engage versus the automatic system from a psychological perspective." Is that a good answer?
Um, that goes right along with the act of asking yourself, do I really want or need the second drink or the third drink? And you're absolutely right. These are small battles. So when you have that battle of saying, of that war inside your head saying, okay, I've taken the tablet, I'm sitting down, I'm addressing the pint of beer, I'm looking at it, and I'm going to mindfully, slowly drink it. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to taste it, as opposed to guzzling it, which I used to love doing on an empty stomach. That's a lot of drinkers do that. I've eaten something. That's one little battle. I've eaten something prior to taking the pill and prior to drinking. I'm drinking slowly. I'm thinking about the fact that I'm drinking. When I finish that glass, I'm going to now have another battle, the battle of wanting another one, the battle of more. So now I'm going to address that battle. So you're right. But each act and each battle and each little thing, or a friend's coming over, they usually drink a lot. Okay, that's a battle. Am I going to take a pill even though I don't want to drink, just because this person's coming over? Or am I going to have them come over, allow them to drink, and I'm going to say I don't feel like drinking? That's a huge battle that you just won, because you're asserting yourself and saying, you know what, I have a lot to do tomorrow. I don't feel like drinking. I'm not going to not allow my friend to come by, and they can drink all they want. I'm not going to drink. This is our new relationship. And now you've just won another battle, the battle of doing what's right for you. Because and so no peer pressure. So yeah, you're right. Every if you look at everything as a small battle to win, this big war, which eventually is getting yourself back, reclaiming yourself, reclaiming your health, your mental health, your physical health, and making alcohol powerless in your life. That's the end game of that war. Is you no longer have power. That lizard, that big warrior lizard, is shrunken down and it's nothing. It's dust. No more power. Now you've won the war on many, many levels. In fact, you've probably won the war and created a new world, which is your new life.
And I love, I'll do the campaign translation because one of the great things about being on Twitch is that it's such a gamer centric community, and the more I'm on it, the more I'm enjoying it for that as well. Um, you know, I recently started a campaign game. We're playing Clank Legacy, and man, campaign playing a campaign game is so much different than playing other games. I'm learning because this is the first one I've done. It's having, I don't even know how many specific modules of the campaign there truly are, but in this game yet, because my wife is handling all of the controlling the. She's the game master here. But you go in and we can play for several hours, and you might not win that particular segment. But that doesn't mean that you're not setting yourself up for a potential win in the end,
Not
in the overall game. And I talking about campaign games, I'll totally stumble over all of the lingo because it's just so brand new to me. The entire concept of playing a game, knowing that this segment of what we're playing today is not the whole thing, and who wins today is not the winner, and that's it's really very much like life and recovery, and really trying to make any kind of changes toward anything positive in our lives is sometimes you sacrifice your short game for the long one. Sometimes you find that the strategy you thought was going to win you the game overall is undermining your individual efforts. And you've got to really look at all of the pieces individually and say, really, what am I doing this for? Am I doing this for, where the game is concerned, am I just doing it for fun to spend time with everybody? Whereas when it comes to recovery, it's, am I doing this because I feel compelled by somebody else to do it? Or because I want to feel better, to think clearer, to be able to feel like I'm the one in the driver's seat and in control?
Jenny, it to circle back to the whole impetus of this chat, which was about adjustments, I think anybody who really makes these small adjustments is going to have a better outcome than people who are extremists. Like somebody who says, okay, I'm going on a vegan diet and I'm not going to have any fat and no salt, no sugar. Those people usually, they can't sustain that. So it's the little changes that make the difference, the little adjustments, is saying, I'm not going to conquer everything. And we'll go back to the war analogy. I'm not going to win the war overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day. All of those, analogies. I'm going to take this just little incremental changes, little adjustments, a little bit of mindfulness, a lot of compliance, a little bit of, stopping this negative self-talk, a little bit of establishing new relationships, adjusting my friendships, maybe not seeing them for drinking things instead of seeing them, to go bowling or for a walk or whatever. These are adjustments, and they're small adjustments, but they all add up to a really good recovery experience, because you're not going to be able to pop a pill for a week and change years and years of behavior.
And the best part of it all is you can make those adjustments whether you started fast or slow.
Exactly. And you just have to recognize them and make them, and you can go back and fix things, and you can just adjust along the way. So that's really the whole trick.
So, are there any other questions out there from the audience? You guys are so great today, and I love seeing the chat so active. It definitely uh, gives us more of the feeling of what we're trying to do here, which is build a community on our Twitch channel. This isn't just supposed to be about us talking to you and giving you information, and it's not meant to be a lecture. It's about community building, and we really appreciate you guys being here. So definitely pop in any additional last minute questions, comments. Um, while you're doing that, once again, I want to thank Claudia. Claudia has been incredibly busy lately, and which is awesome. All good things. But once again, she's taken out a couple hours of her day to join us here on our Twitch stream and to help answer questions and have a conversation with you guys. And
Really my pleasure. Thank you for doing all the tech stuff, Jenny. We wouldn't have a Twitch channel without you. So
we had a lot of new followers this week. So if you're out there for the first time, thanks for following. If you haven't followed yet, costs you nothing to hit the little follow button on our profile. When you hit follow, you'll get alerts saying when we go live. Um, if you're able to subscribe to our channel, we really appreciate that. It helps to financially support our channel. Um, if you can't subscribe, if you're a Prime member, you can actually subscribe using your Prime Gaming membership, and that's for free. But and definitely share our channel. If you can't actually contribute financially, that's fine. There's a reason we don't have everything behind a subscriber wall. We've got everything here for free, which is why we're doing our second virtual conference in June, again, for free. We're not putting up subscriber walls. We want this content to be available to you, whether you can pay for it or not, because it's the information that's important. It's saving your lives and the people that you love that's important. So we do have a donation available. If you can't use it, just tell other people about our channel. Share our channel. Follow it. We will be back next week. Claudia, I believe you are not here next week, correct?
I'm not sure. What is next
We're
week?
doing a watch party of your TEDx and the Never Give Up video. It's a double feature.
Okay, right now schedule is all over the place, but if I'm available, I absolutely will be here.
Okay, I'll send you the link, and we'll keep our fingers crossed. Everybody, cross your fingers.
Oh, I love doing these, truly, and I'm really grateful that people are chiming in. I can't see the chats because if I turn on my Twitch, everything will explode in my house because of my internet. So
it's like dividing by zero.
Yeah, I can only have one thing going, but I do appreciate everyone's support and everybody who shares this information. You never know who's going to hear it, who's going to need it. So keep talking about C3 Foundation, TSM. Keep sharing the love, and thank you again for showing up. It was fun.
Well, I don't see any additional questions, but our little alert box is showing some new followers, so that's exciting. We appreciate that. Paul Turner.
Hi,
yes,
Paul
Turner just followed. So we, and Walter's been with us, Annette's been with us, Nal's been with us. Dr. Baker was back out there again. So we've got we're building a great little community here, and I love it. So we will see you next week, and be good, be safe, take care of yourself, be gentle with yourself, and we'll see you next week. Have a great weekend, guys.
Thank you so much.